The government of Alberta has announced an $8.6 billion program to build new schools amid surging population growth. Premier Danielle Smith, speaking today, said they will add 50,000 spaces over the next 3 years and 200,000 spaces in the next 7.
In Budget 2024, we allocated record funding to build and modernize new schools to accommodate the growing number of students, but it's simply not enough to address this incredible growth. That's why we're increasing our K-12 capital budget for the new school spaces, as well as modernizations through the School Construction Accelerator Program. The new program will allow us to complete construction on about 50,000 new student spaces over the next 3 years and complete more than 150,000 new spaces in the 4 years after that.
The CBC's Julia Wong joins us now from Edmonton for more on this announcement. So Julia, what can you tell us about this plan?
So, Andrew, what really spurred all of this is, as you heard from the Premier, this growth that we're seeing in population here in Alberta. The Premier saying that more than 200,000 people moved to this province in 2023. With that, obviously, families, with people who need to attend school. So the Premier is also saying that these school populations are growing, about 33,000 students every year. That's the equivalent of about 35 new schools being added on every year. And right now, the schools we have in this province, she says, simply can't keep up. So what the province is doing is they are boosting that capital budget for schools from $2.1 billion to $8.6 billion over the next 3 years. And all of that will be used to create more spaces in total over the next 7 years, creating 200,000 new spaces for students. Now, this is not necessarily a new thing that we've heard about in the province. We have known that more people are coming to Alberta over the last few years. So the Premier was asked, why now? Why are you doing this particular project now? Take a listen.
When we looked at 2023, we had 200,000 people come to our province in that year from a variety of different places. And we have done our best to accommodate them on the infrastructure that we have. But every time I talked to a school board chair, I heard the same story, especially the big school boards. And it's the same with the Catholic boards in both cities as well. Like, they're talking about the need to have 40, 50 schools built in the next 10 years.
So how in particular is this going to happen? We've heard that there will be new schools that will be built, 30 new schools being announced every year for a total of 90 over the next 3 years. Schools will also be modernized. Up to 8 schools every year will be announced to be upgraded. Their infrastructure, which had been aging, will be improved. Also, the province is bringing in portables that will create 20,000 spaces over the next 4 years. And there are also a couple pilot programs that have been announced. One for charter schools that will create, the Premier says, 12,500 spaces over the next 4 years, and a pilot capital program for private schools, with the Premier saying that this is a way she hopes that these schools will be able to create spaces. Now, that in particular is getting a little bit of pushback, especially from the official opposition. Take a listen.
As far as I know, this is the first time in Canadian history that public taxpayer money is going to build private schools. It means that the schools will not be built in the neighborhoods where they're needed, in the brand new neighborhoods where young families are moving. It means we give up on economies of scale, and it means that those schools don't necessarily serve every student in the community.
Now, the province says they're trying to speed up the process, so now school projects don't need to wait for the next budget cycle to be approved, with the province saying they hope that this really moves things along.
And during the announcement, there were a lot of questions on whether the province would be about to deliver on these promises. Tell us about that.
Yeah, so the backstory on that is the province has withdrawn its money, its funding for the Green Line LRT in Calgary. That's a project that had been long promised, that had been worked on for many years, but the province was saying that what was pitched is now not what actually is going to happen. And so they are pulling that funding, and that has created a lot of turmoil over the project. It's created a lot of rifts between the province and the city, with a lot of pushback from Calgary's mayor and other councillors. So there were lots of questions about whether municipalities and school boards can actually expect this money to come to fruition. We heard from the board chair of Edmonton Public Schools saying, she's not an expert when it comes to transportation, but they are here to celebrate this funding for schools, the possibility of new schools, and she has no reason to believe that that funding won't actually come to fruition.